We're very privileged to be here with Anthony Hobeika, who's the CEO of MENA Research Partners, and he is one of the thought leaders in this region when it comes to pure economic primary research. He's a thought leader in terms of what the trends are in various business sectors, and we are delighted to have him here today to share some of his thoughts and ideas with us. Anthony, real pleasure.
Thank you so much.
To see you. Good to see you too.
Pleasure.
Anthony, the world's blowing up and there's just so much going on. The pound's going crashing because of Brexit. Wall Street is extremely nervous. Things are going through a difficult phase just before the end of the year. What's your prognosis how the year is going to end and the new year is going to start? One as a big picture and then down to a GCC level.
Sure. Let's say from the end first. If you're seeing all these events happening globally, and interestingly, if you take the GCC angle, GCC countries are busy fixing their own economies, creating business opportunities and investment opportunities for regional and global investors in a world that has its own challenges now. Definitely, we are seeing a long-term sustainable development for the GCC region happening for the next decade. So by 2030, we will see a GCC version 2.0.
In that version 2.0, are we looking at Neom City becoming an emerging new powerhouse? Are we looking at the UAE becoming and extending its positioning through Dubai World Central and its logistic hubs? Where do you see the big trends?
Sure. So what we are seeing is building for the next 10 years what we call a GCC transformed economy. What do we need by transformation? This transformation means strategic change of orientations for the regional economies. If you look at, let's go back to basics. If you look what's happening now is we are ending our own austerity period, which has lasted for the last 3 to 4 years in the region here, where oil prices have slumped. It has created loss. Governments were very aware they need to fix they cannot sustain their economies or their spending at oil prices that's like at the hundreds. Okay, with oil prices today, the new normal is 60 and normal 100. GCC governments were busy fixing their own fiscal situation during the past 3-4 years. So trying to increase their revenues through rationalizing minimizing their costs, increasing revenues by putting in taxes, in new revenue generation, etc. So we are done with this austerity period, and now we are going into bearing the fruits of the long-term transformational plans. We see, if you look into Saudi, you look into UAE, etc., all these countries are transforming their economies. They are unlocking large of value. Where is the value that we see for the next 10 years? In all the visions, we see that there is an opportunity. There is a 570 billion market opportunity for the private sector for the next 10 years in the GCC region. From where this opportunity is coming? If you account for only a 5% growth in GDP, moderate growth, in combination to an increase of only 10% of private sector contribution to the economy, GCC-wide, which is very conservative, you are expected to add at least 570 billion of economic opportunity for private sector. Who's gonna come and fill and create the opportunity is the private sector, and these are the opportunities which we're gonna talk shortly on it. 2, with this market opportunity comes the need for funds. If you look in the market, your capital markets are very underpenetrated. If you look in the bank loans, you are also below your peer comparisons. And if you look in terms of private capital presence, like private equity, etc., we are nowhere from global regions. So there is a large funding gap here. For the next 10 years, you have a market opportunity of at least 570 billion for the private sector, in combination to a funding opportunity of at least of $1.7 trillion. All these numbers mean you have an exponential growth ahead in the GCC region if you rightly position yourself and you rightly ride the strategic themes. Forget the traditional sectors. construction, real estate, etc. Opportunities still out there, but you need to refocus how you visit and invest in the GCC region.
There's been a lot of brain drain from this part of the world over the last few years, and the perception is that that might continue, which means that a lot of muscle, intellectual muscle, might go. So that's number one. And number two, the tendency for the private sector is not to invest internally, but to go overseas and invest safely externally. What are the kind of things that the governments and and the funds in the private sector, what are they doing to ensure that the opportunity stays here?
Sure. Two angles here. So without two angles here. One is on the strategic level, governments are building here the cities of the future. If you look, you just said Saudi Arabia. If you look to Abu Dhabi, you look Dubai, you look in many new cities in Saudi Arabia, all these countries are creating the cities of the future. What does cities of the future mean? An expanded market for investment opportunities, an expanded number of population size, etc. So by building cities of the future, you are building your own human capital, and you're building your own asset infrastructure for the region here. So this is your own cities of the future, your own platform for the next future. Now, how will you fill it? And that's what you're saying about how you position yourself in the region. One example you just said, companies tend to invest outside the region. What I will tell you, and that's one angle we're going to tackle about strategic opportunities here, is what a large set of companies are doing, and successful ones are doing the reverse, which we just mentioned, is they are basing themselves in the GCC region, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi, in Saudi Arabia, Riyadh, which is opening up now more and more. So you base yourself in the region, you create a success story by tapping the local population needs, and you go then globally. You turn your own success stories into regional and global champions. That's the trend we're seeing in the market here.
How many global champions are there? I mean, maybe 10 that have been created from this region and taken overseas, if that. So let me take a step back. If you look at an ecosystem of Silicon Valley or Boston, and now it's happening in China, it's there in Singapore, the ecosystem and the base is quite big and quite strong, and that is helping global corporations to. What are we doing to make that ecosystem so simple, so seamless, so easy that we can actually thrive in this place?
So the easiest way to reply to this is you need to have the early mover advantage in the GCC region. That's the clear answer. If you look at our ecosystem today, it's not 5% to what the ecosystem will look like in the US, but that's your opportunity, and that's what happily and fortunately the governments here are doing. They are aware today. If you look at the past cycles of today, they are fully aware that they need to unlock this value. The private sector needs to come in and share the economic burden with the governments, and governments here are definitely shifting from spending towards a regulatory instance. And that's how we are seeing the next 1 billion company, the next unicorn coming out of this region. This ecosystem is being built, and we are definitely seeing success stories being replicated in the next years to come.
As a thought leader in terms of investment opportunities in this region, do you think there's appetite for FDI, foreign direct investment, in this region, and if so, which sectors?
So one, to have a direct reply to you is yes. If you see how the foreign direct investment have evolved during the last 20 years in the region, they have evolved at a high double-digit rate on an annual basis. Okay, being it all the key countries or peripheral ones, we are seeing a large traction from investors. Why? Because you are building this ecosystem. You are becoming a highly business friendly environment. One is there is a clear shift from cyclical sectors to defensive sectors, from construction, real estate type of activities towards catering to the basic needs of populations, the likes of education, healthcare, food. All these sectors are largely underserved, and what we are seeing is an increasing maturity of the sectors. We are going from volume-oriented, just provide healthcare or schools, towards quality care, quality education. These are strategic orientations. These are some strategic orientations for investors. Two, Many countries now are trying to benefit from their global strategic location, geographic location. Take Oman, take Dubai, take Abu Dhabi, take Saudi Arabia, like Jeddah, etc., King Abdullah Economic City. All these are now benefiting from their geographic location and promoted as global logistics hubs. And logistics transformation, logistics and transportation are a new sector to invest in. You know, so these type of players are coming in. Take technology. No, many countries, take Dubai, take Lebanon, for example, take Jordan, take Egypt. All these countries are aware that technology is the next play to do, and all are reforming themselves to embrace technology and attract companies and be the first countries to generate your first global unicorn in terms of tech companies. Another thing which we just mentioned is taking local success stories into global champions. You have a success, a homegrown brand, and try to expand it. Go east, go west. All these plays are there. And we can name a lot of it. Take which are government backed, like the Ettihads, the Emirates of this world, SABIC, Aramco, and many others. So many plays have proven that you can base yourself locally and go globally.
There seems to be a lot of value locked into family companies because across the region, family companies have traditionally developed this region over the last 50 years. So two parts to this question. One of them is succession, because there is a young group coming in who's not totally aligned with the chairman, the patriarchs and the matriarchs of the families. So they're coming in with technology while the older generation is still staying with bricks and mortar stuff. So that's one. And the second thing is, how can we create an environment where create this vibrant economy and a vibrant capital market rather than everything is just locked in? How do we unlock this family values and things that are sort of stuck in there?
Sure. Two angles here which can show you the gap in the market. One is there is a saying, the first generation builds, the second generation consumes, and the third generation destroys. Okay, and lots of family businesses have went through the cycle and are like when they first were incorporated, they were like flagship family offices, and today are quasi not here. But you have lots of good examples of how you institutionalize yourself to become the family office of the next generation and to be able to succeed throughout generations. So that's one. Two, if you look statistically, or let's say some data, I share some data with you, 90% at least of your economies, okay, are owned by family offices. At least these ones at least own $300 to $500 billion in terms of activity in the region here, of assets in the region here. Okay, so family offices are a backbone who have built economies in the region. But many of these family offices here have in them, in themselves, lots of subsidiaries which can be jewel for clients, for some companies, but are they just doing nothing? So spin-offs here coming in, selling these type of subsidiaries to other strategic players who can take them, etc. So definitely yes. But what's most importantly is that all these family offices, which are present in a large set of sectors, are definitely candidate for investors to come in, take them to the next generation, transform them by institutionalizing them. You put the private sector inside them, you go more on the family side, becoming more on the shareholders, having new management coming in, etc.
You seem very bullish, and the world is falling apart, everything is just like imploding, and you are seeing amazing opportunities. What's driving this energy within you, and what's the message that you would like to give out to people in terms of why this place is open for business?
It's not bullish. If you have asked me the same question like 5 years ago, what I have told you is, look, we are now today fixing our economies. Global countries are growing. The GC region was like faltering, slowing down, because we are fixing today. We were fixing our economies, fixing our fiscal, fixing our unlocking opportunities, etc. These are all headwinds and challenges we have went through for the last like 4 or 5 or 6 years. Okay, but where we are today is we have done with all our home fixing stuff, and we are going now to unlock this growth. Unlocking growth has never happened during the last cycles. If you go back 70s, 60s, and through the 2000s to the new millennial, you will see that governments have always banked on oil to come back to promote economics, to promote activity. Today is not the way around. today our consumer is the new oil of this region. No more oil is the oil, the consumer is your new oil. So there is a change in mentality of vision, etc. And it's happening now. Fortunately, it's happening today. So you're asking me a question as the transformation is happening. So early mover, embrace GCC, you have the opportunity, a golden opportunity to be part of the GCC 2.0.
Anything that I may have missed that you'd like to sort of share?
Thank you very much for your time.
Super. Anthony, it's been a real pleasure.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.